English podcast from the English Charisma channel.
Hello everyone, welcome back to English Charisma. I'm Leo, and I'm super excited to be here today with my amazing co-host, Ava.
Hi guys, I'm Ava, and honestly, I've been looking forward to this episode for weeks. Leo, the topic we're diving into today is something that, well, I think almost everyone struggles with.
Oh yeah, Ava, I know exactly what you're talking about. Today's theme is stop overthinking, just do it. And believe me, I am guilty of overthinking too, but I'd try, keyword try, to break the cycle.
You and me both, Leo. You know, it's funny. Sometimes I spend more time thinking about what I should do than actually doing it. Like, I'll write lists, I'll imagine scenarios, I'll analyze every possible outcome, and then suddenly 3 hours are gone.
Exactly, Ava. That's the trap. You feel like you're being productive because your mind is busy, but in reality, nothing has changed. No action, no progress, just mental gymnastics.
That's such a good word for it. Mental gymnastics, Leo. And honestly, it can be exhausting. But you know what's even worse? The regret that comes afterward. Like, you realize you wasted so much energy thinking instead of doing.
Yes, Ava. And that's why this conversation is so important. We're not here to preach or to sound like perfect human beings. We're here to share our real struggles and the little tricks we've learned along the way.
Exactly, Leo. Because let's be honest, if you're listening to this, chances are you've been stuck in that loop before. Maybe you've been hesitating to start a project, or you've been replaying a decision in your head 1,000 times. We've all been there.
And today, Ava, we're going to break it down. Why we overthink, what it does to us, and how we can shift from endless thinking into action. And hopefully, by the end of this episode, you'll feel inspired to just do the thing, whatever that is for you.
Yes, Leo. So let's get into it.
So, Ava, let me start with a big question. How would you personally define overthinking?
That's a good one. For me, overthinking is when your brain doesn't know how to let go. You keep analyzing, replaying, and questioning something over and over, even when it doesn't actually help you anymore. It's like being stuck on a mental hamster wheel.
That's such a vivid image, Ava. A little hamster running endlessly but never getting anywhere.
Exactly. And you know what's funny? Sometimes the more important something feels, the more we overthink it. Like if it's a big life decision or even just a small personal choice, my brain just goes into overdrive.
Yeah, and the irony is that the bigger the decision, the more we believe that thinking more will help. But in reality, once you pass a certain point, extra thinking doesn't add clarity. It just makes the decision harder.
Totally, Leo. It's like drowning in too many what ifs.
And here's the tricky part, Ava. Overthinking feels safe. It tricks us into believing we're protecting ourselves from mistakes. But in reality, it's fear in disguise.
Yes, that's so true. Fear wearing a smart little costume. And the problem is that when we keep overthinking, we also delay growth. We avoid experiences that could actually teach us something valuable.
Exactly, Ava, which means the real danger isn't making a mistake, it's standing still.
I couldn't agree more, Leo. And you know, sometimes it's hard to notice that we're stuck. Overthinking can feel normal, almost like it's part of our routine.
Yes, and that's why conversations like this are so important. Awareness is the first step. Once you recognize that you're overthinking, you can take the first step towards action.
Definitely, Leo. And here's something I realized. Action doesn't have to be perfect. Often, waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect plan keeps us trapped.
Exactly, Ava. That's a big misconception. Many people think action equals perfection, but really, action equals learning.
Yes, and mistakes are just part of the process. I remember last year, Leo, I wanted to start a personal project, but I kept revising the plan over and over. I was terrified it wouldn't be perfect.
Oh, Ava, that sounds familiar.
Totally. But then I forced myself to just start. And you know what? The first step taught me so much more than all my planning ever could.
Exactly. And that's the secret. Starting teaches you things thinking never will.
So, Ava, after realizing that action is more valuable than endless thinking, how do you usually motivate yourself to take that first step?
Honestly, Leo, I've started using what I call the 2-minute rule. If something takes less than 2 minutes to start, I just do it immediately. It's small, but it breaks the inertia.
That's brilliant, Ava. I use a similar trick. I remind myself that starting doesn't have to be perfect. Just beginning triggers momentum, and momentum is magical.
Yes, Leo. Momentum is like rolling a snowball down a hill. The first push is hard, but once it moves, everything else becomes easier.
Exactly. And another thing I do is tell myself, what's the worst that can happen? And usually the answer isn't as scary as my brain imagines.
That's so true, Leo. Our brains love to exaggerate. I call it catastrophe thinking. It's when your mind creates the worst case scenario out of thin air.
Yes, Ava, exactly. And the irony is, even if the worst case happens, we usually survive, learn, and grow stronger.
Yes, Leo, and the more we avoid action, the more we feel trapped. It's a cycle. Overthinking leads to inaction, which leads to regret, which leads to more overthinking.
Right, Ava. Breaking that cycle is the key. And sometimes all it takes is a tiny action, sending that email, making that call, writing the first sentence.
Exactly, Leo. Small steps matter. And here's something else. Accountability helps a lot. When I tell someone I'll do something, I feel obligated to actually do it.
Absolutely, Ava. And that's why we're sharing this conversation with all our listeners, so you can feel that sense of accountability too, just by listening and reflecting.
Yes. And Leo, what about fear of failure? How do you personally deal with it?
Oh, Ava, fear of failure is huge. I remind myself that failure isn't final, it's just feedback. Every failure teaches me something I wouldn't have learned otherwise.
I love that, Leo. Reframing failure as learning really changes the perspective. Instead of fearing mistakes, you embrace growth.
Exactly. And another thing, I imagine myself 1 year from now. Will I regret not starting today? Usually, the answer is yes. And that pushes me forward.
Yes, Leo. Thinking long term can help reduce the anxiety of the present moment.
Absolutely. And you know, Ava, one thing I've noticed is that overthinking often comes from wanting control. But life is unpredictable. So instead of controlling everything, we can control our actions.
That's so true, Leo. I've realized that letting go of the need to control outcomes is liberating. It's like freeing your mind from unnecessary stress.
Exactly, Ava. And that's why we encourage listeners to just start. Even imperfectly, even with fear, action creates clarity.
Yes, and speaking of clarity, Leo, I think reflection is useful, but only after action. Before action, too much reflection can trap you.
I agree, Ava. Reflection without action is rumination. Action without reflection is learning. The balance is crucial.
Exactly. And here's a personal example. Last month, I hesitated to join a speaking event because I overthought every question I might be asked. But I went anyway. And you know what happened, Leo?
What happened, Ava?
I realized it wasn't as scary as I imagined. I learned a lot, met amazing people, and most importantly, I built confidence I wouldn't have gained otherwise.
That's a perfect example, Ava. That's why action always wins over fear.
Yes. And Leo, do you remember when you started your first online project? You must have been overthinking everything too.
Oh, absolutely, Ava. I spent weeks imagining every problem I might face. But the moment I started, I realized most of my fears were exaggerated, and the learning curve began immediately.
Exactly. And that's the key lesson we want to share with everyone listening. Stop imagining every scenario. Start doing and learn along the way.
So, Ava, let's talk specifics. What practical steps have helped you reduce overthinking?
Well, Leo, I have a few. First, I make a list of actions instead of problems. For every thought that spins in my head, I ask, what can I do about this right now?
That's excellent, Ava. Action-oriented thinking instead of problem-oriented thinking.
Exactly. Second, I set deadlines. Even small deadlines force me to move. Without deadlines, overthinking thrives.
Absolutely. And third, I remind myself that done is better than perfect. Waiting for perfection is the biggest trap of all.
Yes, Leo. And fourth, I talk to someone I trust. Explaining my thoughts out loud often makes me realize how unnecessary some worries are.
That's such a good point, Ava. Overthinking lives in isolation. When you share thoughts with others, it often loses its power.
Exactly. And finally, I practice mindfulness. Even 5 minutes of focused breathing or meditation can calm my racing thoughts.
Absolutely. Mindfulness creates a space between stimulus and reaction, giving you the chance to choose action over rumination.
Yes, Leo. And combining all these methods, I've noticed my productivity skyrocketed. I feel lighter, more confident, and more capable of taking on challenges.
Exactly, Ava. And the most important part is, the more we practice taking action, the easier it becomes. The brain rewires itself to respond with doing instead of worrying. Oh, another thing I've realized is that sometimes overthinking comes from comparing ourselves to others.
Social comparison is a huge trap. When you see what others are doing, it can make you doubt your own pace or abilities.
Yes, and the irony is that everyone's journey is unique. Comparing yourself to someone else only fuels overthinking.
Exactly. And I try to remind myself that the only person I need to compare myself with is me. Am I improving, learning, moving forward? That's the only metric that matters.
Totally, that mindset reduces the pressure to figure everything out before taking a step.
Right. And one thing that helps me, Ava, is visualizing the worst case scenario and realizing it's usually not as catastrophic as my imagination makes it out to be.
Yes, our brains are creative, but sometimes too creative. They love creating imaginary disasters.
Exactly. And that's why small actions are so important. When you act, reality replaces imagination and the fear diminishes.
And every small success reinforces confidence. Action builds evidence that we are capable.
Absolutely. And here's another tip I share with friends. Start with a micro action, something so small that it feels almost silly to delay it.
Like writing just one sentence, making one call, sending one email. Micro actions break the paralysis of overthinking.
Exactly. And after that micro action, the next step feels much easier. Momentum begins, and suddenly, tasks that felt impossible are manageable.
And momentum is magical because it tricks your brain into action. Once you start, your brain rewards progress with motivation.
That's right, Leo. And the key here is consistency. Even small actions repeated consistently lead to massive results over time.
Absolutely, Ava. Another thing I noticed, journaling helps too. Writing down worries and breaking them into actionable steps reduces mental clutter.
Journaling transforms thoughts from chaos into a clear roadmap. It's like turning noise into signals.
Exactly. And when I look at my past journals, I often see how many worries never materialized, and many small actions led to better outcomes than I imagined.
And reflection after action is much more effective than rumination before action.
Totally agree. And I think that's why this podcast is valuable. Listeners can hear examples, tools, and strategies that make the concept of just do it practical.
Exactly. Theory is nice, but implementation is everything.
Yes. One last personal insight. Sometimes overthinking stems from fear of judgment.
Ah, yes. Fear of judgment is huge. People worry about what others think instead of focusing on what they want.
Exactly. And the key is realizing that most people are too busy with their own lives to scrutinize ours.
Yes. And the more we act despite that fear, the more freedom we feel. Every action taken builds courage.
Courage grows through doing, not...
And that's why we encourage everyone listening, start today, take one step, and let learning and growth guide you.
It doesn't have to be perfect. The beauty is in starting, failing, learning, and improving along the way.
And listeners, we hope this conversation inspired you to stop overthinking and just take your first step today.
Yes, and stay tuned because in part 2, we'll dive even deeper, how to deal with fear, perfectionism, and procrastination while building unstoppable momentum. Welcome back, everyone. In part 2, we're going to explore deeper strategies to overcome fear, perfectionism, and procrastination. Ava, are you ready?
Absolutely, Leo. This is where the real magic happens. Let's get practical and personal.
Perfect. Let's start with fear. Ava, how do you personally deal with fear when it's holding you back from taking action?
Well, Leo, I try to confront fear head on. I ask myself, what am I really afraid of? And often I realize that my fear is either exaggerated or imagined.
Yes, Ava. Awareness is the first step. Once we understand the fear, it loses some of its power.
Exactly. And another tactic I use is visualizing success instead of failure. Focusing on positive outcomes shifts my mindset from avoidance to motivation.
Absolutely. I do the same. Visualization is powerful. It primes the brain to expect success and makes action less intimidating.
Yes. And Leo, what about perfectionism? How do you handle the need to do everything perfectly before starting?
Ah, Ava, perfectionism is a silent killer. My strategy is simple. Accept imperfection and prioritize action over flawless execution. Done beats perfect every time.
Totally agree, Leo. And procrastination often sneaks in because of that need for perfection.
Exactly. That's why we recommend micro actions. Small steps reduce fear and delay while building confidence.
Yes, and I combine that with accountability. Telling someone I'll do something makes it harder to procrastinate.
Absolutely, Ava. And celebrating small wins keeps motivation high. Every completed step is progress and proof that action works.
Totally. And reflecting on what we've learned from small actions helps break the cycle of overthinking.
Yes, reflection without rumination. Reflection after action builds clarity.
Exactly, Leo. And the more we practice this cycle, action, reflection, improvement, the less power overthinking has over us.
Absolutely. And one final note on procrastination. Deadlines. Even artificial deadlines create urgency and reduce overthinking.
Yes, that's so important, Leo. And combining deadlines with accountability and micro actions is a game changer.
Exactly. And I'd add one more. Mindfulness. Being present keeps the mind from spiraling into what-if scenarios.
Yes, Leo, mindfulness creates a space for conscious action instead of reaction to fear.
Ava, another thing I find helpful is breaking big tasks into smaller, actionable steps. When I look at a huge project, my brain wants to freeze. But if I focus on just the next step, it becomes manageable.
Exactly, Leo. Chunking tasks makes them less intimidating. I often write down each small action, and checking them off gives me instant motivation.
Yes, and momentum builds naturally this way. One small step leads to another, and suddenly the entire task feels achievable.
Totally. And Leo, I've noticed that sometimes fear isn't even about the task, it's about the judgment from others.
Absolutely, Ava. Fear of judgment is one of the main reasons people overthink. They worry about what others will think instead of focusing on their own growth.
Yes, and realizing that most people are too focused on themselves to scrutinize our actions is liberating.
Exactly. That freedom is powerful. The more we act despite fear, the more confidence we build.
Totally agree, Leo. And here's another tip. Practice self-compassion. Overthinking often comes with harsh self-criticism. Being kind to yourself reduces anxiety and promotes action.
Yes, Ava, self-compassion is like fuel for motivation. Instead of punishing yourself for hesitation, you encourage yourself to move forward.
Exactly. And I pair self-compassion with visualization. I imagine myself succeeding, feeling proud, and learning from mistakes. This makes action feel less threatening.
Absolutely. Visualization combined with small, immediate steps is very effective.
Yes. And Leo, accountability partners are also crucial. Sharing goals with someone creates external motivation.
Definitely, Ava. And accountability doesn't have to be formal. Even telling a friend or posting publicly can create a subtle pressure to act.
Exactly. And celebrating small wins with them reinforces positive behavior. Action leads to progress, and progress leads to confidence.
Yes, Ava. And another strategy I use is setting a timer. I give myself 15 to 30 minutes to focus on starting a task. It's amazing how often the hardest part is just beginning.
Oh, absolutely. Leo, I do that too. Once the timer starts, my brain relaxes a little and just gets to work.
Yes. And Ava, I'd also add reflection at the end of the day. Evaluating what worked and what didn't helps me plan the next action more effectively.
Totally agree. Reflection without judgment helps improve without feeding overthinking.
Exactly. And one final thought, building habits is essential. Repeated action reduces the mental load of decision-making and prevents overthinking.
Yes, Leo, habits automate action. The more we act consistently, the less energy is spent on overthinking.
Absolutely. And as a closing for part two, I'd say fear, perfectionism, and procrastination are natural, but with strategies like microactions, deadlines, accountability, and reflection, we can overcome them.
Exactly. And remember, listeners, action creates clarity, learning, and momentum. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Start today.
Yes, Ava. And stay tuned for part three, where we'll discuss emotional barriers, mental blocks, and how to build unstoppable motivation to act every day. Today, we're diving into emotional barriers and mental blocks that prevent action. Ava, have you ever felt completely stuck even when you knew what to do?
Absolutely, Leo. That feeling of being stuck is so frustrating. Sometimes I know exactly what needs to be done, but my emotions, fear, anxiety, self-doubt, create invisible walls.
Yes, and that's one of the biggest reasons people overthink. Emotional resistance blocks action.
Totally. And Leo, I've learned that acknowledging emotions instead of fighting them is the first step. If I try to ignore fear or self-doubt, it actually grows stronger.
Exactly, Ava. Accepting emotions gives us control. When we say, yes, I feel fear, but I will act anyway, we reduce the power of mental blocks.
Yes, and visualization helps here too. Imagining myself moving past fear and completing the task builds emotional resilience.
Absolutely. And Ava, another barrier is indecision. Overthinking often masks a fear of choosing the wrong option.
Yes, Leo. And the trick is realizing that most choices are not permanent. You can adjust along the way. Action allows course correction.
Exactly. And here's a method I use. I give myself a time limit for decisions. Within a set time,
I choose the best option with available information and act.
I love that, Leo. Deadlines reduce endless pondering, and once I act, I feel relief and momentum.
Yes, and Ava, what about emotional attachment to outcomes? Sometimes we overthink because we care too much about how things turn out.
Yes, Leo, that's so true. Letting go of rigid expectations allows me to focus on the process rather than obsessing about results.
Exactly. Action with flexibility reduces stress and increases learning.
Totally agree, Leo. And one practical tip, I create a worst case plan. If the outcome isn't ideal, I have a contingency. This reduces fear of failure and overthinking.
Perfect, Ava. Preparing without obsessing. And another powerful method is self-talk. Encouraging yourself like a friend reduces the paralyzing effects of negative thoughts.
Yes, Leo, I do this all the time. Instead of saying, I can't do this, I say, I'll try and I'll learn along the way. Small language shifts create huge changes in mindset.
Absolutely. And combining self-talk with micro-actions creates unstoppable momentum.
Yes, Leo. And creating routines is also essential. Habits reduce reliance on willpower, which is often depleted by stress and overthinking.
Exactly, Ava. Habits automate action, and automation prevents the mental paralysis caused by endless choices.
Totally agree, Leo. And another tool, visualization of progress. When I picture how I'll feel after completing a task, motivation increases.
Yes, emotional rewards drive action. Visualizing success makes the first step easier.
Absolutely, Leo. And one final point in part 3, celebrate small wins. Recognition of progress builds confidence, which reduces fear and overthinking.
Exactly. And listeners, remember, emotional barriers are real. But with strategies like acceptance, visualization, self-talk, habits, and celebrating wins, action becomes easier.
Yes, and stay tuned for part 4, where we'll explore long-term strategies to build unstoppable consistency and resilience.
Today we'll explore long-term strategies for building consistency, resilience, and unstoppable motivation. Ava, these are the habits that separate people who act from people who overthink.
Absolutely, Leo. Consistency is everything. You can't rely on bursts of motivation. Long-term action comes from habits and routines.
Exactly. And one of the first strategies I use is creating a structured daily routine. When certain actions are automatic, I spend less energy thinking about whether to do them.
Yes, Leo. And routines don't have to be rigid. They can be flexible as long as they include the core actions that drive progress.
Absolutely. And another method? Tracking progress. I write down every small achievement, no matter how minor. It keeps me motivated and reminds me that action produces results.
Totally. Tracking is so powerful. Leo, I also like setting weekly goals instead of focusing only on big long-term outcomes. It makes progress tangible.
Yes, and Ava, breaking goals into micro goals creates clarity and reduces the mental clutter that causes overthinking.
Exactly. And when I achieve those micro goals, I feel a sense of accomplishment that fuels the next step.
Absolutely. And let's talk about resilience. Ava, how do you bounce back after setbacks?
Well, Leo, the key is perspective. I remind myself that setbacks are part of the process, not a sign of failure. They teach lessons and strengthen my approach.
Exactly. Viewing setbacks as feedback instead of defeat is critical for long-term consistency.
Yes, Leo, and another tool I use is visualization of long-term success. Even if I failed today, I focus on the bigger picture, which keeps me motivated.
Absolutely. And gratitude also plays a role. Reflecting on what I've accomplished keeps my mind positive and reduces the tendency to overthink mistakes.
Totally agree, Leo. Positive reflection reinforces action instead of rumination.
Exactly. And here's another tip: environment. Surrounding yourself with action-oriented people reduces overthinking.
Yes, and Leo, accountability networks work wonders. Sharing goals with others creates gentle pressure to act.
Absolutely. And combining accountability with rewards, celebrating achievements, even small ones, creates a positive feedback loop that strengthens habit formation.
Yes, Leo. And let's not forget mental and physical health. Adequate rest, exercise, and mindfulness improve focus and reduce stress, making action easier.
Totally agree. A healthy mind and body support sustainable action. Overthinking often increases when we are exhausted or mentally cluttered.
Exactly. And another key strategy, reflection. Weekly reflection on progress, failures, and learnings reduces overthinking by clarifying priorities.
Yes, Ava. Reflection after action is powerful. It transforms experience into wisdom.
Absolutely. And building resilience also means practicing patience. Long-term results don't happen overnight. Accepting the process prevents overthinking about immediate outcomes.
Exactly. And celebrating small victories along the way creates momentum and reinforces action.
Yes, Leo. And one last long-term strategy, self-compassion. Being kind to ourselves keeps motivation sustainable. Criticism leads to hesitation, while encouragement fosters consistency.
Absolutely, Ava. Self-compassion is like a mental fuel tank for consistent action.
Totally agree. And remember, listeners, building unstoppable consistency is not about being perfect. It's about persisting action, learning from mistakes, and creating habits that support long-term growth.
Exactly. And we'll tie everything together and share real-life examples, final motivation, and strategies to overcome overthinking forever. One thing I notice is that overthinking often comes in waves. Sometimes we're calm, ready to act, and suddenly, bam, our mind spirals into 1,000 what-ifs.
Oh, yes. That spiral is exhausting. I call it the mental tornado. One moment you're confident, the next moment you're paralyzed.
Oh, perfect name, Ava. And the key is learning to ride the tornado instead of getting sucked into it.
Exactly. And Leo, one technique I use is labeling thoughts. I tell myself, okay, that's an overthinking thought. I acknowledge it, but I won't act on it. Yet. It separates me from the loop.
I love that. Awareness is the first step. Once you can step back and observe your thoughts, you gain control instead of being controlled.
Yes, Leo. And another thing, sometimes our minds try to predict the future endlessly. I call it future trapping. We imagine all possible problems before they even exist.
Exactly. And the irony is, most of those imagined problems never happen. But by the time we realize it, hours or even days have passed.
Totally. And that's why action is the antidote. You replace imagination with reality. You learn by doing instead of guessing.
Yes, Ava, and small actions are magical. Even writing one line, making one call, or starting one task can break hours of overthinking.
Absolutely. And Leo, have you noticed that overthinking often disguises itself as perfectionism? People think they're just preparing, but really they're avoiding action.
Exactly. And Ava, perfectionism is subtle because it feels productive. But in reality, it's procrastination dressed in nice clothes.
Love that analogy, Leo. And breaking free requires accepting imperfection. Done is always better than perfect.
Totally agree. And another subtle trap is comparison. People see someone else's success and think, I must wait until I'm ready, smarter, or better.
Yes, but the truth is, readiness is an illusion. Action creates readiness.
Exactly, Ava. And momentum builds confidence. One step leads to another, and suddenly, tasks that seemed impossible feel natural.
Absolutely. And Leo, one tool I use is a micro goal chain. I break a project into tiny steps. Completing each step gives a sense of achievement and reduces mental clutter.
I love that. Momentum multiplies when you celebrate micro successes. And Ava, another tip is external accountability. Sharing your goals with someone adds subtle pressure to act.
Totally. And not just pressure, also encouragement. When someone cheers for you, you feel supported and motivated to take the next step.
Yes, Ava. And combining micro actions with external accountability creates a powerful framework. You're acting consistently, learning, and feeling motivated all at once.
Exactly. And Leo, I also practice reflection at the end of the day. I review what I accomplished, what I struggled with, and what's next. It transforms experience into growth.
Perfect. Reflection after action is a game changer. It prevents overthinking about past decisions while reinforcing learning.
Leo, something I've realized is that our environment has a huge impact on overthinking. If you're surrounded by indecision, negativity, or constant distractions, your brain spirals faster.
Absolutely, Ava. Environment shapes mindset more than we think. I make it a point to keep my workspace clean, focused, and full of positive reminders. Even small changes can reduce mental clutter.
Yes, and I also curate the people I interact with daily. Being around action-oriented, encouraging individuals motivates me to act instead of overthink.
Exactly, Ava. Your social circle can either reinforce fear and hesitation or encourage courage and experimentation.
Totally. And Leo, another subtle factor, energy levels. When I'm tired or stressed, my brain overthinks every small detail. So self-care isn't optional. It's essential for action.
Absolutely. Sleep, exercise, proper nutrition, and breaks all improve mental clarity and reduce overthinking. Action flows more naturally when your body and mind are in sync.
Yes, and I also combine this with planning focus blocks. I dedicate certain hours of the day to high-priority tasks, free from distractions. Even short, focused bursts of action prevent spiraling thoughts.
Perfect. And during those focus blocks, I practice the 2-minute rule. If a task can be started in under 2 minutes, I do it immediately. It's amazing how much it prevents procrastination.
Exactly. And Leo, celebrating small wins within those blocks is key. Even tiny progress matters and builds motivation for the next task.
Absolutely. And here's another mindset shift I use. Instead of asking, am I ready? I ask, what's the next step I can take? It keeps the focus on action rather than fear.
I love that, Leo. Actionable questions are much more effective than abstract ones. It's like pointing your energy in a clear direction.
Exactly. And over time, these small, consistent actions accumulate to massive progress. Overthinking decreases naturally as the brain gets proof that action works.
Yes, Leo. And something I want listeners to remember, fear isn't the enemy. Fear is a signal that something important is about to happen. Acting despite fear is what creates growth.
Absolutely. And Ava, humor helps too. Laughing at our overthinking tendencies reduces pressure and makes action more approachable.
Totally, Leo. Sometimes I just imagine my thoughts as little cartoon characters spinning in circles. It lightens the mental load and lets me move forward.
Oh, that's a perfect mental trick. And Ava's tip for listeners is visualize your fear as something external, laugh at it, and take action anyway. It's surprisingly effective.
Yes, and another personal insight, journaling. Writing down worries and actionable steps reduces mental chaos. You see patterns, track progress, and reduce unnecessary loops of overthinking.
Absolutely. And the best part is when you journal consistently, you can see how far you've come. That alone is motivation to keep acting.
Yes. And Leo, here's another strategy, setting boundaries. Saying no to low-value tasks or people who drain energy allows you to focus on meaningful actions.
Exactly. Boundaries protect your mental space. Overthinking often grows when your attention is scattered. Protect your focus and you act more effectively.
Totally. And combining boundaries with micro actions, reflection, and accountability creates an unstoppable system for action.
Exactly, Ava. And let's give listeners a small exercise. Today, pick one task you've been overthinking. Break it into 2 micro actions, set a timer for 15 minutes, and start.
Yes. And after completing it, reflect briefly. What worked? What didn't? And how it feels to take action despite hesitation. This builds confidence for the next task.
Perfect. And over time, these small exercises rewire the brain. Action becomes habitual, overthinking decreases, and progress accelerates.
Exactly. And Leo, I also like pairing action with rewards. Even small treats or self-praise reinforce positive behavior and motivate continued action.
Absolutely. Positive reinforcement is powerful. The brain loves it, and it creates a natural feedback loop for productivity. Another thing I've noticed is how much overthinking is tied to uncertainty. When we don't know the outcome, our brain tries to fill in the gaps with what ifs.
Absolutely. And the trick is to accept uncertainty as part of life. You can't control everything, but you can control your actions.
Yes, one technique I use is called action over prediction. Instead of trying to predict every detail, I take a small step and learn from the result.
Exactly. Action produces feedback, and feedback is way more reliable than endless speculation.
Totally. And sometimes our mind even invents problems that don't exist yet. I call it phantom obstacles. Taking action often dissolves them instantly.
Perfect term, Ava. Our imagination is brilliant at creating phantom problems. The antidote? Just move. Action grounds us in reality.
Exactly. And small actions are surprisingly transformative. Even doing one thing you've been avoiding shifts energy and clarity. Yes, and momentum builds naturally. One completed task leads to another, and before you know it, the mountain feels like a series of manageable hills.
Absolutely. And here's another tip. Focus on progress, not perfection. People overthink because they expect flawless results before starting.
Exactly. Done is always better than perfect. Action builds clarity. Perfectionism builds paralysis.
Totally. Let's talk about self-talk. Overthinking often comes with negative inner dialogue. I can't do this, or I'll fail. Changing that narrative is key.
Absolutely. I reframe thoughts like that into I'll try, I'll learn, and I'll improve. Small language shifts have huge effects on mindset.
Yes, and pairing that with microactions creates a feedback loop. Positive thought, small action, proof, confidence.
Exactly. And over time, that loop rewires the brain to default to action instead of rumination.
Totally agree, Leo. And accountability is also critical. Sharing your goals with someone else creates subtle pressure and encouragement.
Absolutely. And the social reinforcement is more motivating than self-criticism. Having a cheerleader keeps you moving forward.
Yes, and I also schedule reflection blocks. Instead of obsessing over mistakes throughout the day, I set aside time to analyze, adjust, and plan.
Perfect. Reflection after action is far more effective than rumination before action. It turns experience into growth.
Exactly. And combining reflection with journaling helps too. Writing thoughts and small steps reduces mental chaos.
Absolutely. One more thing. Humor. Laughing at our overthinking patterns lightens the mental load.
Totally. Imagining my worries as little cartoon characters spinning in circles is surprisingly helpful.
Perfect. Visualization and humor together reduce fear and overthinking.
Exactly. And for our listeners, here's a simple exercise. Pick one task you've been overthinking, break it into 2 micro actions, set a timer for 15 minutes, and start.
Yes, and after completing it, reflect briefly. What worked, what didn't, and how it felt to take action despite hesitation.
Exactly, Leo. And repeating this daily trains the brain to favor action over rumination.
Absolutely. And over time, momentum grows, confidence rises, and overthinking diminishes naturally.
Yes, and let's also remind listeners, fear is natural. Feeling nervous or anxious doesn't mean you shouldn't act. Courage is acting despite fear.
Exactly, Ava. Fear signals growth opportunities. Action transforms fear into skill, experience, and confidence.
Totally. And another key strategy, focus on what you can control, not what you can't. Overthinking thrives when we obsess over things outside our influence.
Absolutely. Focusing on controllable actions, no matter how small, leads to consistent progress.
Yes, and pairing action with rewards, small treats, self-praise, or sharing progress reinforces positive habits and builds momentum.
Exactly. Positive reinforcement is the secret ingredient for long-term consistency.
Leo, I want to share a personal story. Last year, I kept delaying launching a project because I overthought every tiny detail. The content, the audience, the tools. I felt stuck for months.
Oh yes, Ava, that's classic overthinking. What changed?
Well, one day I realized that no amount of planning would make me ready. I had to start imperfectly. I chose one small step, just creating an outline, and focused on completing it.
And that one step broke the paralysis?
Exactly. Once I acted, momentum started. Each subsequent step became easier, and over time, the project took shape. I learned more in action than I ever would have from endless planning.
That's a perfect example. It shows how small actions lead to big results and how overthinking only delays growth.
Totally. What about you? Can you share a moment when overthinking held you back?
Sure. When I first started my YouTube channel, I spent weeks debating whether my content was good enough, whether anyone would like it, or if I should wait for a better camera. I didn't post a single video for a long time.
Sounds familiar.
Exactly. But then I realized waiting wouldn't improve my readiness. I recorded a short video with what I had, posted it, and immediately learned so much. Feedback, engagement, and even mistakes taught me more than weeks of hesitation.
That's the essence of action over overthinking. Learning through doing is far more effective than planning endlessly.
Absolutely. And listeners, the key takeaway is simple. Don't wait to feel ready. You create readiness by taking the first step.
Yes. Let's discuss daily routines. How do we structure our day to minimize overthinking and maximize action?
Great question. I use a combination of focus blocks, micro actions, and reflection periods. For example, I dedicate 2 hours each morning to high-priority tasks free from distractions.
I do something similar. I also schedule short breaks to reset my mind and prevent mental fatigue, which fuels overthinking.
Absolutely. And another key component is planning the next day the night before. Writing down the first action for the next morning reduces decision fatigue and stops the mind from spiraling before the day starts.
Yes, and celebrating small wins during the day keeps motivation high. Checking off tasks, even minor ones, builds momentum and confidence.
Exactly. Another subtle tip, reduce multitasking. Overthinking often grows when we scatter our attention across multiple tasks. Focus on one action at a time.
Totally agree. Single tasking allows deeper engagement, better results, and less mental noise.
Yes, and pairing single tasking with micro actions and reflection creates a sustainable cycle of action, learning, and improvement.
Absolutely. Let's touch on emotional triggers. How do we prevent fear, self-doubt, or procrastination from stopping action?
Well, I start by acknowledging the emotion instead of resisting it. Label it. This is fear, or this is doubt. Then I act anyway, knowing the feeling is temporary.
Exactly. Accepting emotions without letting them control us is crucial, and sometimes visualization helps. I imagine myself acting confidently despite fear, and it reduces hesitation.
Perfect. And journaling also helps. Writing worries and breaking them into actionable steps reduces mental clutter.
Yes, and after taking action, reflecting on what worked and what didn't strengthens confidence and prevents the same overthinking in the future.
Absolutely. And another tip for listeners, pair action with small rewards. Even minor acknowledgments like a coffee break, a short walk, or self-praise reinforce positive habits.
Totally. Positive reinforcement makes action more appealing and builds a natural feedback loop.
Exactly. And over time, this combination of focus, microactions, reflection, and rewards rewires the brain. Action becomes the default, and overthinking fades naturally.
So, Ava, I think what we've uncovered here is powerful. Action beats overthinking every time. We've shown that small steps, single tasking, reflection, and emotional awareness help us stay on track. The more we practice, the more natural it becomes to act instead of spinning in circles with doubts.
Exactly, Leo. And to our listeners, remember this: perfection is not the goal, progress is. Each step forward teaches you something new, brings you closer to your dreams, and weakens the habit of overthinking. Just begin, stay consistent, and let action itself guide you. The courage to start is all you truly need.
Quick recap, we've learned that overthinking holds us back, but simple, consistent action pushes us forward.
Yes, and the key takeaway is this: stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start small, start now, and let momentum carry you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We truly appreciate your time and energy.
Yes, thank you. If you enjoyed our conversation and found it helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to English Charisma for more inspiring talks. See you next time.